Hello! We are now at lesson 5, which is all about creating engaging LinkedIn content. In this lesson, I'll be breaking down the core components of a LinkedIn post with examples so you can get an idea of how I break down my LinkedIn post structure. Then I'll go over tips for writing and staying consistent, as well as some additional ways to grow your presence outside of directly posting. So with that, let's get started with the anatomy of a LinkedIn post. I don't really adhere to hard and fast rules around, how long a post should be or what a post should include, but there are some key elements that are good to keep in mind. So first, we've got the hook. This is your first sentence. And in fact, I spend a lot of time editing this after I've written my full post because it's the most important part of the entire post, in my opinion. So if I'm not able to capture people's attention in that first line, there's no hope of them reading the whole rest of my post. Oftentimes I'll start out with one hook, but after I'm done writing my post, it might be that I need to change my hook slightly based on the content and catch people's attention as they're scrolling. Then we've got the body of the post. This is the bulk of the post. This is where you provide the information or the insights that you teased in that hook. Then you've got the summary and call to action. So this is a quick wrap up to end your post. I'll usually do a brief summary and then end my post with a question to try to get some comments or to get people messaging me. And then at the end, I've got the sign off, and that is on every one of my posts. It tells the reader a little bit more about me without having to visit my profile. This also helps me solidify my positioning with every single post. All right, so let's dive in deeper into each of these items, starting with the hook. Again, this is your first sentence, and I recommend trying to make it fit in the first line before it gets cut off where you have to click see more. Rule of thumb here is that it should be attention grabbing and make it about the reader. What's in it for them? What will drive them to want to read the entire rest of your post? You can also reference your audience here. So for example, before you launch your next LinkedIn ads campaign, use this checklist first. You can also address a common question that you get asked as part of your hook as well. And I've outlined additional hook examples in the following slide. So you'll see here that I've outlined my hook in these pink boxes. Some of them are shorter than others. I would say this first one probably got cut off a little bit, but this third one here that's shorter definitely didn't get cut off. So the next time you're doing a Google Ads audit, or if you manage your own Google Ads account, here are a few somewhat sneaky things to check for. So that piques someone's interest. They know that I'm talking about Google Ads. I'm directly shouting out the next time you're doing an audit, or if you manage your own account, these are some things to check for. And this got a pretty strong engagement rate and also resulted in some folks DMing me asking about just my general audit process. And there are a few more tips and notes about your hook that I wanted to provide. The first one is a lot of people confuse attention grabbing with shocking or controversial. They are not the same thing. I personally do not subscribe to shock value. I want my hook to be attention grabbing, but I don't want to lean on controversy. Again, there's a fine line between being interesting, piquing someone's interest, and then just making them mad or having some like outrageous lines to capture people's attention. I just wanted to put that out there before going any further. And then next up is just think about what makes you want to read a post. So what did the intro look like? It probably grabbed your attention in a way that made you want to read more. So you can look through your activity and see the posts that you've liked, and then look specifically at that intro and that hook now that you know about this structure and the concept of the hook. And my next point here is that just because you've written a hook and then you write the rest of your post, you're not set in stone on that hook. I'll usually write my full post draft and then revisit my hook just to make sure it's on topic and helps my post really stand out. Sometimes I'll create a few different versions of the hook and then see which one I like better. And remember, all of this is a test. Some things will work better than others. The LinkedIn algorithm is changing all the time. So if something worked really well in the past and it's not working as well, that might be a reason why. You just have to keep experimenting and see what comes naturally to you, what works best for you and your content, and then continue to iterate and improve upon that. Next up, we've got the body of the post. This is where the bulk of your content is, and it should support and fully form the idea in your hook. Keep it really tight to the original topic that you had, but if you find yourself rambling and straying from that topic, that probably means that you've got a few topics in one post. So edit it out, but then add that as a new idea to your idea bank because it's probably valuable. You've just now kind of lost the plot a little bit with meandering topics and not staying true to your core topic and your hook. And sometimes the post turns into something completely different from how it started or what you originally intended your topic to be about. And in that case, sometimes it's easier to rework the hook than to make the post fit with your original hook if it's just not working out. So, for example, I've had plenty of instances where I thought I was going to write about a specific topic, we'll say keyword research. And then as I'm writing, it just feels more natural for me to talk about I don't know, search query analysis, for example. Like, so say part of my keyword research process is looking at search queries. I find that maybe my post is now turning into a search query analysis post. If I like it, if I feel like it's a really strong post with a really strong point of view, I may just roll with that new topic of search query analysis and rework my hook to fit that. Again, this is all a process. Everything is an experiment, but I would recommend, especially at the beginning, taking a concerted effort to edit yourself and make sure that your hook and the body of your content all support one specific talking point and topic. And that can be really tough at first, but again, as you practice, you'll be able to better stay on topic with your posts. So here's some more examples, again, with the hook in the pink box and then the body, the supporting text in the blue. So you'll see here that everything that is below the hook supports the hook. It fleshes out that idea further. Especially for this second example, I don't lock my PPC clients into long-term contracts. I operate on month-to-month engagements. That can be something that people are like, wait, what? I want to learn more. And then immediately I deliver that more. I do this for a couple reasons and I outline my reasons and additional context that they're looking for. So just keep that in mind as you're creating your post, that everything should support and flow into one another. All right, so post formatting tips. For longer posts, I recommend using more spaces. You'll start to see that a little bit here. This third example that I've outlined, it's kind of lengthy, but I gave everything a lot more space just to make it more readable. And then if you have a post that's more how to or it's list based, those are best served by using bullet points or emojis to visually provide those steps. Again, especially for LinkedIn, as people are scrolling through, any way that you can make it easier on the reader to digest the information quickly, you want to do that. I would avoid long paragraphs without breaks, even if you need to just do one sentence or two sentences per line. I recommend doing that. And you can put an image to accompany a text post. I've not seen a major difference in reach, but I also don't think it hurts it. So if you have an image that makes sense to accompany, say it's an infographic, a diagram, anything like that, feel free to put it in there. I don't think it's going to skyrocket your engagement, but I also don't think it'll hurt it either. On the other hand, putting links in your post usually throttles your visibility. LinkedIn does not like outbound links at all. I recommend if you have to put an outbound link, wait a little bit and then put that link in the comment after you've posted it, or just reference it if you don't absolutely need to include the specific link. So you could say like, visit the link in my profile, or check out my profile to learn more, or go to my website without actually putting your website URL in there. So you've got some options, but I would definitely avoid directly putting a link in your post unless you absolutely have to. All right, and next up, we've got the summary and the CTA, the call to action. This is a quick wrap up to end your post. It's a little bit of a summary, then ends with a question to try to foster comments or people to DM me or message me. Those are outlined here in these yellow boxes. You can see in this example, do you do monthly plans for your PPC clients? If so, do you have a different approach? So trying to elicit conversation in my comments, that one helps my reach, but two, I'm genuinely curious if people have different approaches to doing things than the way I do it. And then in this example, do you work with clients who haven't run ads before, or do you only work with accounts with historical data? I do both, but it's pretty fun to build from scratch. So again, I'm asking that question, but if a potential prospect was reading this post, they know I do both, but I really like building from scratch. So that might appeal to prospects who are newer to PPC. So again, there's always a sort of client acquisition strategy, but I am genuinely curious what other PPC experts think and how they go about their work. And lastly, we have the sign off. So I have a section at the end of every LinkedIn post, and I literally copy and paste it from every LinkedIn post. It's very consistent. It tells the reader about me, what I do, and how they can work with me. Again, this also helps solidify that positioning piece. And I do this because I want people to know that I'm a PPC and analytics expert. I'm focused on B2B, and I work specifically in LinkedIn ads and Google ads. So if I'm a prospect and I'm seeing this post, this immediately tells me more about the person who wrote it. And in the second line, I have interested in my marketing services or a coaching session, reach out. I'd love to see if I can help. That specifically outlines an action that I would like the reader to do. And this particular call to action in the sign off speaks to both the marketing services that I offer. But again, if a potential prospect is just looking for coaching, then I'm also letting them know that I offer that. And then follow to stay up to date with my insights and findings. Even if you don't want to do that second thing, at least give me a follow and you can stay up to date with what I have to say. So that's the breakdown of my sign off strategy. And I will say that I have experimented with a bunch of different sign offs over time. And in fact, as you're taking this course, my sign off might look a little bit different because I was prepping for marketing this course. So again, this is an ever evolving thing that can be molded to fit your needs and where you're at with your business. See how one feels for a while and then make adjustments if you need to, or if you've got business updates, reflect that in your sign off. So tips for writing LinkedIn posts consistently. Like everything, when you make something a habit, you're more likely to stick to it. I recommend setting aside 30 minutes to an hour, even more if you want, per week to write. The idea bank obviously makes this process a lot easier. When I sit down to write, I just look at my running list of ideas. I pick out which ones I like the most, and then I set out to write them. And with that, you can also set up sort of a post topic schedule for yourself if it's helpful to have those parameters to work off of. So it could be something like I've outlined here. And again, this is just an example. So Monday could be channel education, Tuesday more about a PPC strategy, Wednesday could be experience or story based, Thursday a how to, and Friday could be personal. Sometimes having that additional guidance, those additional parameters can help you get more posts out or at least get over the hump of starting to write. And I will say if 5 posts a week seems like a lot, it is a lot. So if it's easier for you to build the habit by just starting with 2 or 3 posts per week and work your way up, do that. The goal of this is not to front load a ton of posts and then stop forever. The goal is to be consistent over time and build that habit. And then lastly, just remember the basic components of a story. You've got your beginning, middle, and end. So again, you've got the hook, the beginning, the middle is that body content that supports the hook, and the end is that call to action piece with your little sign off. So it's just the basic components of a story. You're just turning it into a LinkedIn post. And as you're getting started, you likely won't see a ton of engagement, and that is okay. I mentioned this back in lesson 2, but I just wanted to reiterate it again. I actually consider this to be a good thing. It allows you to experiment, learn, and grow without tons of people watching you and without a ton of pressure. So don't worry about engagement, likes, or follower count. Just zone in on trying to speak to your ideal customer and also finding your voice and building that writing habit. The engagement will eventually come if you're consistent and you're providing value. And if you do blow up overnight, congrats. That's really awesome. But if you don't be discouraged. Reframe it. View it as a good thing that you're kind of getting all the kinks ironed out now before you've got a ton of people watching you. So in this lesson, I've talked a lot about posts and creating them, structure, all that. But that's not the only way to provide valuable insights and contribute to LinkedIn. Liking and commenting can also help you grow your network and your presence. As you can see in these examples, LinkedIn actually showcases when you like or you comment. Obviously, these folks aren't me, but I was scrolling through my feed and saw that Sydney liked this post. So I ended up reading it because I also thought it was interesting. I saw that Tim Davidson commented on this. So again, it elevates when you interact with posts as well. And this is another way to grow your presence and contribute on LinkedIn without creating a dedicated post. The only problem I face with this personally is that oftentimes the original poster says the concept perfectly. So I don't really have insightful, impactful comments to add in these situations. So in cases where the post is really well put, or I think it perfectly conveyed the concept, I'll either tell them that because it's a nice word and it's the truth, or I'll just like it. So if you're not feeling inspired or you're not able to get a post out, you can always rely on commenting and engaging with other people's posts. All right, rounding out lesson 5, action items. I recommend to start liking and commenting on posts if you haven't already. That's a pretty low level of effort just as you're scrolling on LinkedIn. Like some posts, make some comments, and then create one post using an idea from your idea bank and apply the hook, body, and CTA principles that I covered in this lesson. Again, just one post. You don't have to actually publish it, but just get in the habit of thinking through the framework of structuring that post. And again, it gets you in that mode of taking an idea from your idea bank and then applying it over to actually creating a post. And in that post draft, come up with your sign off for yourself. It could be similar to mine, where you've got kind of the 3 lines. It can be something totally unique to you, but at least draft that sign off for yourself. And then from there, I'd want you to set up a weekly appointment for just writing posts or even recording videos. I know I didn't really talk about video much in this lesson or in the previous lessons, but if you're like scripting out a video, set aside a weekly appointment just for creating that content. And again, it can just be 30 minutes to start and then expand to an hour if you want over time. And I do recommend making this separate from your brainstorming appointment so that you can approach writing from a fresh perspective. So, for example, on Thursdays, I do my brainstorming session, and that's just 30 minutes. And then on Friday, I have my actual content creation block. So I like having that separation, that distance from coming up with the idea to actually creating the post, because it lets things kind of settle and I'm able to approach writing with a clear, fresh perspective. So now that we've talked about creating content, we're going to move into measuring and keeping track of your content performance. This might seem dull, this might seem like a weird lesson, but there is a huge hidden benefit in that you'll have a content repository that you can use in the future for repurposing your posts. With that in mind, I will see you over in lesson 6.